Welcome to Hot Topics on the Edge of Show. I'm January Jones here with my special co-host, Isabel Castro, creator of Utopia in Beta.
Good to be here.
We also have Unique Divine from Nibiru joining us. Nibiru is a high-performance layer 1 blockchain built for cross-chain DeFi. Great to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Coming up, we'll be talking about the AWS outage that knocked out crypto this week, A16Z's State of Crypto 2025 report, and we'll talk with Unique about Nibiru.
This is another production of Edge of Company, a rapidly growing media ecosystem, empowering the pioneers of Web3 technology, culture, and innovation. Let's get into it. So starting off this week, a major Amazon Web Service outage recently disrupted many crypto platforms like MetaMask, Coinbase, Ethereum Layer 2 networks that rely heavily on the centralized cloud infrastructure. Despite blockchain's promise of decentralization, these platforms experience significant service interruptions because they do depend on AWS functions for critical things like data retrieval and transaction processing. This incident has sparked some important questions about how decentralized crypto really is if key parts remain centralized. Can we really call these platforms decentralized, or is this kind of a new kind of piece of decentralization that's dependent decentralization for the industry now? Unique, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't know if it's as bad as it might seem. From essentially, like, a lot of crypto still runs on the centralized players for cloud compute, right? AWS and Google Cloud. And really, even if you have like a large scale outage, like, that's going to affect most mainstream products on the internet. I don't think Web3 can like hide from that, or at least is in a stage where it could so far. But the important thing is, like, your asset custody and most of your on-chain functionality is still like safe and isn't compromised when you have an outage like that. So it's I think it makes headlines, but it's not like that concerning, I guess, personally, to me. But
Do you think that it's kind of a misunderstanding about really what the reality is of decentralized um, exchanges?
I mean, it does hint at like their fault tolerance does depend on other cloud providers, but I don't think it means like, assets are at risk or there's like a security problem through it happening. So it depends how much of like purists people are in caring about like where the nodes actually run from. Like if they're on, you know, East and West servers and AWS and Google, or if they're, on like something more or less popular, right? Like less easy to topple over. But
But
it's not
there's
like it's
no,
easy to have an AWS outage either, though. So
yeah, but there's no getting around, using AWS and centralized services, given the scale that we're going with DeFi, right?
yeah, I would say so for sure. Yeah.
So I kind of first woke up to the fact that Web3 isn't as decentralized as everyone kind of makes it out to be yet. Back in summer when I went to a decentralized AGI conference, and their headline sponsor was AWS. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit of a wake up call, because I've always been kind of into decentralization. That's one of like the main things that I write about. And yeah, I think there are alternative providers being built in the Web3 space that are trying to kind of target our reliance on these big players. They're just not at the scale that is necessary yet. And I think if there's a positive that can come out of the AWS outage, it is that this continued reliance has come into kind of the spotlight, and maybe it will spark even more people kind of building more of these kind of solutions so that we can move into the decentralization space. Going off Unique's point as well, like the back end on blockchain, that's not going to be touched still, even if there is an AWS outage. So at least we know that. It's just accessing it is obviously going to be an issue if you've got AWS outages and stuff like that happening.
Well, speaking with the general topic of what's been going on this year, 2025, moving along quite fast, A16Z just released a new report this week called The State of Crypto 2025. Overall, it confirms what we've been talking about on the weekly news cycle here on the Edge of Show. Crypto has moved from niche to mainstream, is the major headline. So let's highlight two themes from the report: the rise of corporate and private blockchains and cross chain solutions. This year, we've seen big financial names like JP Morgan, Fidelity, and Visa building private blockchain and stablecoin platforms that are becoming core parts of the financial system now when they once were just experiments. At the same time, bridges and cross chain tools have opened up new frontiers where major barriers were in place even just a year ago. So reading through this report, my initial thought was, wow, is there going to be an infinite amount of blockchain coming our way, and all these cross-chain solutions? And it really might change how the industry is going to think of digital infrastructure. Is there room for everybody? Is there infinite growth in this space? So, Unique, what do you think about this as a founder participating in this with the blockchain yourself?
Although it doesn't look as much like as close to the ethos of Web3 to see like private blockchain specific to businesses, the huge thing there is that it's getting people, well, one is it's bringing in more like millions of users, and Web3 has had more of an issue with like being mainstream than being decentralized, I would say, for like since coming out of its infancy. And if if basically business specific blockchains are one avenue to unlock people using crypto regularly, then it's a really healthy sign just in general. So a lot of that stuff of, I mean, even when you saw like the rollout of Coinbase wanting to do Base, and then many other similar platforms with like centralized exchanges announcing they're launching them, or banks, okay, it's like, sure, a lot of the champions of like the beginning of crypto would like not want institutions doing that, but the fact of the matter is, it's if that's going to bring tons of liquidity and usage and just mainstream adoption, I think those are all like really good things to be seeing happen in the industry. Yeah.
Isabel, what are your thoughts on this? You said you've been writing about this as well.
Yeah, I've actually just finished an article looking at the whole question of whether it's worth building a new blockchain for kind of financial institutions and kind of like traditional finance fintechs. Is it worth building your own blockchain, or going on the existing ones like Base or Ethereum or something like that? And I found that talking to people, it seems to come down to what these institutions actually want to gain from this. Obviously, there's the benefits of kind of faster and cheaper kind of cross-border transactions. That's been kind of looked at for a while now in the space. But then there's this whole idea of owning the full technology stack and moving away from kind of the traditional payment rails, which we saw with, well, I haven't talked directly to Stripe, but kind of people speculated that's kind of what they were looking to gain. And they managed to do it with their own private blockchain, because they already have the influence and they already have kind of the user base. And the user base doesn't really care what blockchain or anything like that they're going to use. They just put the blockchain, they've said that it's kind of like cheaper or faster or whatever, and their users are happy with that. They can choose to use that, or they can choose to use like traditional rails, and that's all cool. So I think it's in institutions' interest to kind of embrace blockchain. Whether they build their own blockchain or not is a question that only they can determine. And yeah, I think the fact that they're embracing blockchain and crypto in general is, I'm in two minds, because I like, on some levels I don't like institutions coming into kind of Web3, but on the level of kind of it gives the space recognition that it isn't just a scammy place to be, I think that's great. That's always going to be good.
Did you get an idea of the scale of cost of what does it take to build your own blockchain?
I mean, so I was looking specifically at, initially I was looking at kind of blockchains that have been launched to launch native stablecoins on these blockchains, right? So the people that I talked to, they were kind of in two minds about the cost and whether it really depends on kind of what you're using it for. And just using it just to launch a stablecoin maybe isn't the right way to go, because you're not going to get that much upside, and there might be a lot of friction to use that instead of kind of USDC on Ethereum or something like that, something very mainstream. It does have benefits in terms of if you've got your own blockchain, then USDC can take a while to kind of launch on there, and it can be expensive. So they said something about that. But yeah, in terms of cost, it really depends on the project, honestly, and whether they can justify it. It's like any other product, really. Can you justify it with the amount of kind of users that are going to come in? Because a lot of the fees that they're going to gain from it is through transaction fees. So they need kind of users on their blockchain if that's going to be their main revenue stream.
Well, Unique, you obviously have perspective on this. Tell us a little bit about your experience putting up your blockchain.
Yeah, if you're talking about in terms of like time and just effort costs, I mean, it's you know, as Isabel says, it's essentially just comes down to like, does it make sense for your use case, right? Like if you don't have any need for changing anything about like the actual like gas rules or low level infrastructure, or it can basically operate the same as another chain, then the cost for that has gone down substantially, right? Like you can just deploy a new EVM chain with like OP stack or some other, technology setup like pretty easily nowadays. But it really just comes down to if you do want to change something, or if you don't want other people's transactions on the ledger, is why you would go kind of like the make another one or go the private route. Or like you touched on, if you're Stripe, or you have like a massive user base already, where the flexibility benefits outweigh the benefits of like network effects from using another chain like Ethereum. That's really what it comes down to. So like basically, I would say all of the chains now, it's if they're made in with like a legit objective, should be changing something about the like tech stack on the chain to justify why they're there, more so than just like making a chain to make a chain.
The other trend that was highlighted in that report that I wanted to talk about that seems quite relatable to your project is this cross chain, these bridges that have happened over the last year, and it's been letting a lot of the Bitcoin liquidity come into the system through various paths. So maybe we can talk about those two things in terms of your project.
I know the biggest thing, probably the biggest unlock for us in terms of Bitcoin liquidity, like you're touching on, is connecting with like the Layer 0 stack. So Layer 0 works on like most EVM chains, and then also Solana, I think. And so for us, the biggest unlock there was accessing like Coinbase wrapped BTC, and then also like yield bearing versions of other tokens that otherwise wouldn't be able to access like a new L1. So like we started with building everything in Rust and Wasm in the like Cosm Wasm ecosystem in Tendermint, and then added EVM support as like an additive upgrade to the chain. And then basically connecting to a multi-chain Layer 0 stack was like pretty big to being able to have inflows with like ETH and BTC and just like other yield bearing tokens that wouldn't be able to make their way into the ecosystem, which is useful. Like in my case, for Nibiru, we're trying to build basically like this super app with lots of access to yield, and then like the native perp stacks that has all these like nice functionality, and then the chain moves really fast, right? It's kind of, if I had to sum it up very concisely. And so yes, bridges are important, but especially like making sure that people can get in and out of the token representations they use on other chains, like from anywhere, right? Regardless of where they started from.
Yeah, well, let's dig into that a little bit more, and tell our audience about what you're doing. So, like we were just talking about earlier in the show, why build your own, right? What is the motivation there? How do you see what you guys are doing at Nibiru being the next thing that's happening in this quickly evolving landscape?
Yeah, a lot of what we started the project for was actually to build basically faster and safer to use like perpetuals decks. Was like the initial motivation behind it. I mean that it evolved into adding a lot of other, benefits into the layer one itself, like wanting, doing parallel transaction processing and multi VM support and like all of this other stuff that's on the website now. But a lot of the genesis for it actually, yeah, so it's to make like a trading app. And so the being able to have like liquidations performed like automatically and without relying on like external providers, making sure that like the data indexing is like very efficient and can scale to support like not just like normal DEX flow, but something like similar in performance to a centralized exchange. That's a lot of the reason like we built a chain. And yeah, so a lot of the like journey of the project has basically been like bringing that to life.
And another point that was made when I was doing a little bit of research here is sustainable yield is a focus of the product. Can you go into what that really means for you guys?
Yeah, basically, in some senses, like the contributors and like people in the L1 Foundation really having a bias toward one, like opportunities for people to LP or have other, like basically use their crypto in such a way that it's not only just new projects popping up and like inflation where they're generating returns from, but actual, like yields that is sustainable and that they can keep, right? Basically just so that it's something more sticky and like long lasting for like the DeFi ecosystem that surfaces on the chain over time. So in that case, it's like what is concrete examples of that is if you've probably heard of like products where you put Bitcoin toward like other miners and try to earn yield on your Bitcoin in Bitcoin, or similar things with like ETH over ETH yields, or you put in a stable and then at some percentage you get back stables, right? So like I know Syrup is one of the products that does that with Maple, if you're familiar with that in the ETH ecosystem, right? So in some sense, you want to aggregate all of these things for people so that they're very easy to find. Like you increase the discoverability and then make it that it's easy to, deposit and basically access a lot of the tools that are already there, and then add some new ones yourself as well, which is a lot of what we're doing on Nibiru. So there's like the in-house products, like I mentioned, like building the perps out, but then also it's making it very easy to access yield opportunities and essentially like compose them on the chain together.
Well, if people are interested in learning more, what's the best way to connect with your communities?
You can find everything through their website, so nibiru.fi, and really active on Discord and Telegram for the most part.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Unique. That wraps up this episode of Hot Topics. We talked about the AWS outage that knocked out crypto, A16Z's State of Crypto report, and what Nibiru is doing in the new landscape of layer ones.
I'm January, here with guest co-host Isabel Castro from Utopia and Beta, and our guest, Unique Divine. Stay curious, keep pushing boundaries, and don't forget to subscribe to us on your platform of choice and follow us on socials so you never miss what's next on the Edge of Show.